Charlie. I'm an alcoholic. I'm subbing for Julie, who was supposed to speak tonight. She needed a pinch hitter, so if it stinks, see Julie. I want to thank Bruce for calling me this week and giving me a heads up again. And it's good to see my friends. A bunch of my friends showed up tonight. It's really great. And thank you for supporting me. My sponsor, too. So if I do badly, tell Julie. I got sober on the 11th of June of 1981. That's my only sobriety date. I've had two sponsors in that time, a guy named Bill and a guy, Bob. That wasn't planned. It just worked out that way. I'm not one of those people who believes in divine name choices. So I'm not one of those guys who believes in a lot of divine, stuff. Someone told me one time when I was going to speak, when I was really new, and I was asked to speak at a meeting for 10 minutes, and I said, well, what do I talk about? And he said, don't talk about anything that's happened in the last 3 weeks because you have no perspective on it. I go, okay, But happy birthday to the people who took their birthdays tonight. Congratulations. And for the people who took chips, I hope you keep coming back because we've all taken chips. Everybody in this room's taken a chip, and there's a lot here, and we hope that we can be examples for you to come back again. That's all we're here for, really, is to kind of guide each other along. And I was born in Glendale, a really ethnic community down in the San Fernando Valley. We moved to Encino after that because apparently it was more conservative, and then after that we moved to Anaheim, where it was so white you can't cast a shadow in Anaheim, and my dad was, I think, the only Democrat in the county in 1957, and so I suffered political persecution from my classmates because he had a Kennedy sticker on his bumper. And I've always felt left out. I've always felt behind and awkward. And I had good parents. They were nice parents. I grew up in a good community. The people were caring, and the schools were good, and the teachers were excellent. I didn't think so at the time, but they turned out in retrospect. It's funny how in retrospect, childhood gets better, teachers seem better. Everybody, you start liking things from your past that you can't change anyway. So, but I grew up with privilege, and we were lower middle class, but I had everybody rooting for me. I was an only child, so there was no one else to root for in my family. And my parents had minimum education. My dad had a 5th grade education, and my mom was about 7th grade. And they were Depression-era kids. And so I grew up in that, and I had asthma, and I was sick a lot, and I missed a lot of school. And if I hadn't been a good speller, I don't know what I would have done. If you're a good speller, it doesn't help you much in school, but it's good with girls later on. And I had one thing going for me in school, and that was that I had an enormous reservoir of potential, apparently, waiting for me to dip into it. And I don't know about anyone else here, but when people tell me I have potential, I take it as a compliment. And you do too. But they don't tell people who are using their potential that they have it. They're just doing things. And I had all this potential, and there were teachers and priests and high school counselors, and everybody wanted to tell my parents that I had potential. They would always sit down with a folder and lay it out on the desk and say, Charles has lots of potential. We just don't know why he doesn't do anything with it. And my reaction was always the same, and that was, I know I've got potential. Apparently, I've got potential. Now my parents know I've got potential. Thanks a bundle. And I will use that potential when I'm goddamn good and ready to use it, and not even a moment before. When I do use it, I hope you've got sunglasses on, Scooter, because I'm going to light you up. But until then, you might want to take your concern for my potential and go wipe it on somebody else, because if you were such hot stuff, you wouldn't be a high school counselor, would you? It never came out in exactly those words. I usually said, I'll try harder. But I'm a rebel, but I just don't tell anybody. I'm one of those secret rebels that I'm always shaking my fist at things and not saying anything about it. And some of you actually did something about it, and you're the ones who did time. But here we are, we're all together. We all got the same thing we're looking at. We're all walking up the same hill. And I got out of high school with nothing but my potential. Really, I had my potential flag flying, and I went right in the music industry. I was a clerk in a record store, and I was working there. And these guys who were also suffering from unused potential, but they told people about it. They came into the record store and recognized me. I knew them sort of in high school, but I wasn't much of a joiner in high school. I always felt like everybody else seemed to know what was going on. I don't know why I felt that. I felt like they all kind of knew each other, or their parents all knew each other, and I've got these hokey parents. My dad he'd been a Marine Corps drill instructor for 8 years, but then he was a cabinet maker and worked with wood, and would go off to work in the morning with his silly little lunchbox, and he'd have glasses on that always had sawdust on them, from working in the garage. And my mom was a housewife, and here these other kids' dads seem to be going to work in a suit with a tie and a briefcase, and I always felt crummy, and it was, my father would make my lunches for me in the morning. It was just horrible, when you see the other kids that had cafeteria cards, and you're sitting out there with a sack lunch, and everything. I focused on everything. I watched how the popular kids walked. I watched how they talked. I watched how they interacted with people, and I just didn't get it. And so I was at this record store working, and they came in and said, "Hey, we're having a party Saturday night. You want to go?" Well, I'd never been to a party because I also have another problem, and that is I hate people. As a species, really, not any particular individuals. I just hate the whole damn group. Not you, but you know who they are. And they're driving by right now, just having a good time on Saturday night, and not knowing them what the meaning of life is, but I did. And I didn't want to go to this party. I really did not, because I'd never been to a party before, and I assumed there would be others there. And I said, okay. And I went to the party, and I got there with my buddy John. He was my best friend, and he was a drummer in a band, and I thought I'd catch some of the girl runoff from him. And got to this party, and it was in Santa Ana. It was in an old Victorian house. It was November of 1968. I remember it because I had just turned 18, and I walked in, and it was like a beehive in there. There was stuff going on everywhere in this house, and it was in Orange County. So the hippies they were Sears hippies. People in my generation understand that. There were people that they would have been hippies, but they waited too long, and now they're getting all their hippie clothes at Sears, and there was nothing really hip about them. And I didn't fit in with hippies either. My father was a Marine, fat chance I was going to grow long hair and shake my fist at the system in my house. And here I am in this room full of dozens and dozens and dozens of ferret-faced little bastards. I'd never seen such a collection of people dancing around. Half the room's on acid and the other half is drunk, and they all think they're having a conversation. And I stood there just judging, because I judge really well. I do excel at that. And Bob knows that. I call Bob, and he tells me he sees my name come up on his phone, and he gets out the sage and does an Indian purification ritual over the phone before he answers it. But I'd be a great judge, too. I'd be a great judge on the bench if it weren't for having to base your decisions on facts. But anyway, that's another night. So I'm standing in this party, and I thought, I got to get out of here. And my friend John had just disappeared, and I thought, oh, this is so dreary. I do not fit in with these. What is wrong with this? I just can't stand this. And somebody came by and handed me a can of malt liquor, and I'd never had a drink before. And now I've got this can of malt liquor in my hand, and my first thought was, if my dad finds out I'm holding a can of malt liquor in a house full of hippies, he's going to kill me. And then my second thought was, if the Archbishop of the Diocese of Orange County finds out that I'm standing here with a can of malt liquor when I took my pledge when I was 13 during my one of my sacraments to not drink till I was 21. All this is going through my head at the same while I'm holding this can of malt liquor, And I thought, then the third thought was, no one's going to offer me a Pepsi. So I just cracked it open and started drinking it. And halfway through that can of malt liquor, it occurred to me that I'd been way too hard on you people. You know, I started to feel better. I started to feel comfortable. I started to feel connected. I started to feel attractive for a change instead of, you know, the way I always felt. I mean, attractive like my eyes are up here, girls, that kind of attractive. And I just started to feel everything kind of kicking into place. And I liked you. It was a strange feeling. I enjoyed listening to you. I thought you were fascinating. And that's all in a half can of malt liquor. I had no inkling. I thought that was a miracle that happened. I drank this malt liquor and I started to feel better about everything. And all the other stuff that I was worried about, I didn't even care. Why would you care when you feel like you're there? You know? And that's the only way I can describe what happens when I drink, is I don't get drunk. Other people mistake it for drunk, but I know what I am. And I felt like I was there for a change, like I was in the moment, and nothing was going to alter that. I was so happy. I'd never experienced joy like that before. And I wound up leaving that party later. I went into a blackout, as I recall. Well, I don't recall. I just went into a blackout and wound up running alongside of John's car, holding onto the door handle and vomiting all over myself and just laughing my ass off because I had been to the mountaintop and I'm not going back. Wherever I came from before, I'm not going back. And my life changed then. And I didn't understand what the problem was when people years later said I had a drinking problem, because drinking was not a problem. It was everything else that was the problem. Even after years of drinking, even the people that I thought were fascinating had lost their luster, and my life was crummy. I was just I wound up. I had a lot of petty little experiences. I managed to get out of the draft. You would think I would have taken that opportunity to do something with my life, but the phrase "you would think" is the tripwire of every alcoholic. You would think, you know, and then whoa. And so I got a job. I wanted to be a writer. I decided that because it didn't involve sports. And I got a job in a bookstore because I thought, writer, work in a bookstore, it's going to work. This is going to work. And I was working there and met my first wife there. And we got married and should not have, you know, again, we were young. We got married. We gathered all of her resources together and got an apartment and all the stuff we needed. And my life, that didn't fix it. And she loved me. I mean, she really did. And for all of my immaturity, I thought that I loved her too. And I suppose I did. I don't think you can fake that. You can't get that feeling and fake that. But I couldn't sustain the responsibility of a relationship with another human being like that at that level. And my drinking was pretty, you know, you hear people sometimes, I love hearing wild drunkalogs. I love hearing about, you know, people come out of blackouts and somebody's going, cut the red wire, you know. I love that stuff. I love blackouts where, you know, a guy came out of a blackout and yelling, cover me, I'm going in. That's awesome to me. In a world that isn't very awesome usually, that is. I never came out of a blackout saying much of anything, truthfully. I came out of blackouts with people saying, boy, I bet that hurt. But because that's the kind of drinker I was. I believe the fastest way down a long flight of stairs is to just relax. You know? And I was, there's nothing glorious about it. I've awakened in a restroom at a Carl's Jr. with people beating on the door. I'd passed out against the door, and I've come out of blackouts dragging. You hear people say, I fireballed a car. I jumped out of my car and yelled, you pigs aren't going to take me alive. I love that too. But my experiences with cars, one example is I just came out of a blackout and was dragging the side of my Volkswagen along a stucco wall in an alley. and then got it wedged between those newsstands they used to have on the sidewalk and a post. And it was like, what happened? And then you got people going by and people behind you honking their horn, and you're going, I just got here myself. Just give me a second, Just give me a moment to pull it together. And they say alcoholics don't have any willpower. I got willpower to burn, man. I can come out of a dead blackout. And I'm not always a blackout drinker. I was around for the more tawdry parts of it, but I've come out of blackouts, and it takes every bit of willpower I can muster to keep from screaming. When you come out of a blackout, and alcoholics are good at this because, my first wife would come out. She tried to drink with me one time. It was very embarrassing for her, for a change. And she drank about 2 glasses of wine and started drinking a third glass. We were trying to drink together, that really awkward kind of drinking together, like, oh, come on, you'll see what I mean. And she said, ooh, I'm starting to feel like I'm losing control here. And I thought, well, that's because you're a quitter. See, when I drink, I'm just starting to get some control. Life starts to make sense when I drink. I start to feel comfortable and powerful and able to make decisions. I make decisions better, I drive better, I do everything better when I drink, as I tell myself. And her brother, her brother was an alcoholic and had been in several hospitals and rehabs in the 70s, and they didn't have many rehabs at the time. He would just go in for like a sanitarium, and he was 25, he was my age, and he get locked up for a month and then get sent out, and then he could just go back and do what he was doing. And I'd only met him one time before, but he was going to come over to our house for dinner one night, and he showed up, and there we were. He showed up, and we hit it off like brothers. I had a bottle of bourbon, which was my favorite. I like a good phlegm cutter to start the evening off, where you get toss one back and get that kind of feel, and everything starts shaking loose. And we were playing music and talking and laughing, and I look over and there's Lisa standing in the doorway of our bedroom going like this, which is the international, men know this, it's the international sign that you're not going to get a compliment, is when they look at you and do this. And so I said, excuse me, Bob, and I went into the bedroom, and she shut the door, and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, stop giving Bob alcohol. Bob is an alcoholic. And I rolled back on my heels and said, Bob is no more of an alcoholic than I am. The problem we have here is that you are nag, and you need to back it off, sister. Turned around and strutted out of that bedroom, and she just burst into tears, so we just turned the stereo up, And the sad ending of this story is that 2 weeks later, Bob was dead. He drowned in Lake Castaic. I had to go up and get his car and his belongings up there and drive him home. And, no one talked about alcoholism then. Nobody made a big deal about it then. And my life was just progressing. We wound up getting a divorce. Before we got a divorce, I started going to therapy thinking that would help. And truthfully, therapy is great. I'm dating a therapist now. I love her. And she's great. Therapy does work. It just doesn't work on alcoholism, because the prerequisite for therapy working is the truth. And if you're an alcoholic, you can do the math on that one. I couldn't even get a whiff of the truth because I just had built this scaffold of deception all around me, a scaffolding of lies, and on front of it I put a sign that said, coming soon. Because I'm going to be through this at some point, and then you'll see when you scoffed at me, and you treated me that way, and you mocked me, and you made fun of me, and my parents didn't trust me. You're going to find out that you made a big mistake, that I was going to come through. And I never was going to come through. My father died when I was 23, and I just felt grief because I never really explored my relationship with him, my friendship with him. My father and I didn't talk much, and he loved me. He adored me. And I just wouldn't let off, I wouldn't let on. I just kept him, I treated him with indifference. And I don't think there's anything crueler than indifference in the way you treat somebody. If somebody hates me, I can get up a little of this against somebody hating me, but when someone treats me indifferently, I don't know what to do. There's no way to do it. And so I just keep quiet. And I swallow it. I swallow it all down and press it all down and lock it all up. And my mom and dad had 2 babies before me, and they both died at birth. And then my mom had me, and then my mom got pregnant again, Catholic, and she got pregnant at about 42, and she went in the hospital again, and I got sent down to the Klein's house, our neighbors, and was spending a couple of days with them while she went in. And I remember vividly laying in that bed in Chris Klein's bedroom, tracing my finger against the wall and just thinking, please, God, help my mom be okay and let this baby be all right. Just let this happen. And the next day I was told I could go home and just don't mention babies. And the house, we had cards and stuff stuck in the screen door and food and all this stuff, and no one was saying a word in the house. I didn't know what had happened. No one ever told me what happened. And but I know what happened inside of me, and that was I didn't believe in God. I thought God was a punk. It's not that I didn't believe in God. It's just that I didn't believe that God had any relationship in my life. I thought he was out there with his good, fine people, and you know who they are. All the people God likes. They're the kind of people that do everything right. They put gloves in their glove box in their car because it's called a glove box. And they pour with a measuring cup too in the bars. You always know when you're going to get a loser of a bartender when they use that shot glass, instead of just free pouring. And I liked bars, and so my mom and I just didn't have much of a relationship with her either. And so life became smaller, as it does with alcoholics. I don't know about anybody else. I'm just an alcoholic. I tried drugs, but I didn't like the idea of I took speed for a while and didn't like the idea of my eyes trying to beat me in the next room. Come on, man, let's go. And smoked marijuana for a while just to be polite. And marijuana, wow, I sit there completely bored, and then all of a sudden I'm hungry for ketchup packets in the kitchen at 3 a.m. And I ate a bouillon cube once just because it was crunchy and it tasted like chicken. And the thing was that drugs got me high, and I don't want to be high. I want to be there. There's a big difference to me. And so I kept trying to drink and keep going, and I was peeing blood, and I was getting sicker and sicker and going to the hospital, but not to stay. So I didn't have to answer that question yes on the yellow card. And eventually on the 11th, I was going to a therapist, and she was very helpful, but she said, don't ever come here smelling like alcohol again or I won't treat you. And so I drank after I went to the sessions. And I would go see her, and her name was Daisy, and she was a wonderful human being, and she was very helpful in listening to me, but she's listening to nonsense, self-pity. Self-pity, I found, is not an aphrodisiac. It really doesn't get people going, hey, who's that guy over there feeling sorry for himself? And she was doing a meditation retreat in Montecito, and I was living in my mom's house in Anaheim, which is where most male alcoholics wind up, at mom's house. If I ever open a halfway house where people can stay, I'm going to call it my mom's house, because you can get up a lot of fire with Victory House and Phoenix House, but nobody wants to talk about it if you're in my mom's house. Nobody buys the T-shirt either, and you can't tell anybody, so you want to get out of there as quickly as possible. And I was there, and she had. I got there early, and I pulled up in the parking lot, and it was stacked parking, so people just kept pulling into this. It was a dirt lot. Everybody's pulling into this place, and it was at the Casa de Maria up in Montecito, And I go upstairs, and there's Daisy, and she said, "Would you like something to drink?" And I'd been drunk the night before, and I was just starting to get a hunkering for something to take the edge off. And I said, "Yeah, I'll have a glass of Burgundy." And she laughed. And she said, "We don't have any Burgundy here." And my first thought was, this is a Catholic retreat house. There must be some unconsecrated blood of Christ around here somewhere. I go find it, I didn't say that. I said, "Oh." And she said, "Would you like some tea?" And when you just start to come off of a drunk, chamomile just isn't going to do the job. And I took the tea, and I started to get detox at a meditation retreat. If you ever choose to do that, keep the receipt, because you're going to want to get a refund. But the next morning we had a guided meditation. They went door to door, banging on the doors. Come to meditation. So I went to this guided meditation, laying on the floor, and she was playing pan flute music on a little cassette player. And now I want you to walk across a field. You're barefoot. You can feel the cool, wet grass under your feet. And you walk up and you see a waterfall. And you go to the waterfall, and you can feel the mist in your face. And you step into the water of the waterfall and hold your hands out, and the water turns blue, and it washes away all of your sadness. And the water turns red, and it washes away all of your anger. And the water turns green, and it washes away all of your jealousy. And we went through the whole Sherwin-Williams catalog, and the water turns Swiss moonshadow, and you're gone. And all I can think about laying on the floor was, I am so uncomfortable here. I could feel the shag carpeting coming up through my shirt. Everybody else seemed to be okay. They're breathing steady, and I'm vibrating on the floor. And then she goes, "I want you to step out of the waterfall. Now step backwards, and I want you to look through the waterfall to the other side, and you will see who you will be 5 years from today. I want you to visualize who you're going to be 5 years from today." And for the whole time I was there, I wasn't really paying that much attention. And all of a sudden, I snapped to attention, and I looked through that waterfall, and I saw myself hanging by my neck in my mother's bathroom by the cord from my robe, dead. Keep the receipt. And that was one of those WTF moments where I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then it was over. Then she stopped. She turned off the pan flute music and said, "Now, I want you to go out on the grounds of the meditation retreat, and I want you to walk around and visualize how you can get to that place in 5 years." And I was floored at that. So I went out on the grounds, like she said, and wandered around, feeling worse and worse, until I reached, after about a half an hour, I think, I was as far out of there, as far to the end of the property as I could get, and it was all trees, and I sat on a little bench there, and I felt despair. And I don't know, despair is an underappreciated word, just like desire is. A desire to stop drinking doesn't mean, I just want to stop drinking. A desire means that everything inside of me wants to change, and I don't know how. And there is nothing lonelier than an alcoholic in despair, not because we're alone, out away from people. It's not because we've isolated ourselves, but it's because I can't tell anybody how I feel. What am I going to tell? Daisy used to say, "You got to tell Lisa the truth when she gets home from work." What am I going to tell her the truth about? She'd come home, "Hi, how was your day?" "Well, I got up about an hour after you left, and I left for work, and I, showered and started drinking bourbon, and by noon I was at the Pussycat Theater watching the noon showing of Donkey Lunch, and then I came back and on the way home did something disgusting, and came back here, took another shower, started drinking. How was your day? You can't tell the truth. When you're a practicing alcoholic like me, I can't tell the truth. Do you like my shirt? No, it looks stupid. It looks stupid because I can't have one. That's how I look at things. If I can't have it and you've got it, you're stupid. I wanted to play the piano at one point. My parents asked me, if you could play a musical instrument, what would you like to play? And I said, I was about 10, and I said, the piano, because I knew there was no likelihood we were going to get a piano at our house on my dad's salary. It would be more likely we get the Mercury space capsule delivered to our backyard than a piano. And I came home one day after school had gotten out in about the 6th grade, and it was Christmas vacation starting, and in our living room was a Kohler and Campbell upright piano, brand new piano. My parents had gone in way over their head on that one. And I looked at that and I got ticked off because I never said I wanted to learn to play the piano. I just said I want to play the piano. You don't get it. I want to sit down, throw the key cover back, and play the piano. I don't want to do finger stretching exercises and learn how to play chords and all that stuff. I want to sit down in a club where people are drinking and partying and there's all kinds of beautiful women in nice gowns and flip that key cover up and just start to play something off the top of my head, something a little mournful, and have all the good-looking women in the room stop and look over, and all their partners would look at me and be irritated, and then the best-looking dame in the room would come sauntering through the crowd, slithering through, partying the crowd, and she'd get me by the collar and by the hook of my belt buckle and go, I want you now. And I'd say no, because that turns them on, I heard. But never had a chance to figure that out, but that's what I heard. You want me? No, I don't think so. I want you to desire me. But there I was back at the retreat place and feeling like my life was not going to change, that tomorrow it would be the same sequence of events in the same order over and over and over again. And by noon, I would be drinking. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd be drinking. And I would go through the same ritual that I did every single night, where I'd pass out in the living room and then have to get up and pull it together the next morning to go to work at this bookstore. And I was miserable, and I was sick. I'd tried other things, and it didn't work. And I didn't know what I was going to do, and I hit the wall. And Chuck Chamberlain, I heard Chuck Chamberlain when I was relatively new, or actually I was very new, and he said, no, I take that back. I take it back. It was Gene Duffy. Gene Duffy said, I sat down at a bar. An alcoholic knows desperation when they sit down at a bar and the bartender slides a drink in front of them, and they go, if I drink that, it's going to kill me. But if I don't drink that, I'm going to die. Now what? Now what? I don't have a choice here. There's no choice here. I have to drink it. And if I don't drink it, I'm going to die inside. What do I do now? And at the moment of that despair, I felt something inside that sounded like a voice, but it obviously wasn't a voice, or I'd be in a hospital right now. But it was something that said, you're everything that you're afraid of, and I still love you. And I didn't know where that came from. And I just burst into tears, real manly thing to do. And I sat there and sobbed for half an hour, and then I wandered back to the place where this retreat was, and I just went into where my bed was and just laid down and slept. And the next morning I just got up and left. And I haven't had a drink since then. That was the 11th of June of 1981. And for 4 days I white-knuckled it. And then I got a call from my soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law, and she said, Debbie, who is Bob's, my brother-in-law who died, it was his widow, had been in a 21-day program in Orange, California. And my mother-in-law called me and said, can you give Debbie a ride to an AA meeting? Because I told her I'd stopped drinking. And I said, sure. I ran in and got my cape on, and I was going to save her because she needed it. She was a bad drunk. And besides that, I've been separated for about 20 minutes, so I figure, you never know. And because I was such a sight for sore eyes. And I went and picked her up in my beat-up Volkswagen, and we chugged over to this meeting. It took us about 20 minutes to get to this meeting in Tustin at the City Hall conference room. And there were about 300 people there. And I pulled up in front, and she had 21 days of sobriety, and she 12-stepped me. And if you think you don't have enough time to work with somebody new, don't kid yourself. If you've got 5 days of sobriety, find somebody who's just come in with 1 day and tell them how you got 5 days. Tell them you'll walk with them. Tell them to call you every day. And if they don't stay sober, it's not your fault, but you'll stay sober. That's what I found from my experience. And so she 12-stepped me. She didn't tell me what Bill and Bob would have done, or she didn't quote the big book, which would have been useless to me because I was an English major in college. I was in college, I got in college when I was 17 and graduated when I was 30, but I'd studied journalism and English, and I knew, all the great poets and the great writers of the English language. And I looked, she brought me in and got me a copy of your big book. Charlie, you got to get a big book. I thought, a big book? I work in a bookstore. How big a book are we talking about? I didn't say that. I said, okay. And she brought me into the literature lady. And this is Orange County, where you get, she said, if you stay sober 30 days, you get a chip and a hug. A chip and a hug. I thought, oh, God, what could make me come back more than that? I like my friend Eileen W., who said she came to AA going, help me. Yeah, help me. And that's how I was. I didn't want to talk to you. I didn't want to look at you. I walked in that room and thought, oh, my God, it's like a hyper-caffeinated dog park in here. Everybody's just shaking hands and around. And I couldn't, and I got the big book from the lady. I only had $3. She said it's $5. That's how much it cost in 1981. And I took out 3 of the sorriest looking dollars you've ever seen. These dollars look like they'd given up all hope too. And I said, I'll come back next week and get it. And she said, well, how much money do you have? And I said, I got $3. And she said, it's the second Sunday of the month. It's only $2 tonight. And I thought, come on, And she said, I'll take the $2. The book is yours. Don't worry about it. You don't owe us anything. That other $1, when the basket goes around, put that $1 in the basket, because nobody stays sober around here on somebody else's dime. So just do that and see how you feel. So when that basket went around, I didn't know what was going on at the meeting. The speaker was good. I liked him and listened to him. And I went out, I'm sitting there, and they passed the basket around. I took that $1. I don't know where she was in the meeting, but I had the thing in the air, and I let go of it and watched it just, drift into the basket. And I went out for coffee with these losers that had all been in their rehab with Debbie, and they all had wristbands on, and I felt less than because I didn't have one. That should be the 21st question on that yellow card. And then I went home and I felt better. I don't know why. I wasn't working the steps. I wasn't doing anything. I went back the next week because AA, I guess, met on Sundays, and she was there, and she took a chip, got a hug. Let me show me the chip. I had to hold back my joy at seeing her chip. And that's how I looked at everything in AA. Hi, I'm Jeff. And I thought, well, it's Jeff, is it? In my head, I said, hi, Jeff. And it was just inner sarcastic all the time, trying to deflect every bit of positive energy people were trying to pitch my way, except it wasn't affecting you. Everybody seemed to still have a good time, no matter how I disapproved of their behavior and their can-do spirit. That can-do stuff is really fills your heart when you're a newcomer, to see all these can-do people that probably had it easy all their lives and not like mine. And so I went out for coffee with them again. It's just more dreary talk. My eyes were rolling. I'll tell you something. Here's a cue for a better sober life. Learn to if it's for me, I'm in the tub. Hold that up again. Thank you. So it said go another 20 minutes. I think that was my glasses. I went back to AA the third week because I felt safe there, and I didn't know why. I didn't have the steps going for me. I didn't have anything going on. I didn't have a sponsor. I just knew that when I was sitting in AA with you, nothing bad was going to happen to me. I didn't know why. I just felt it. And so I came back, and I heard Chuck Chamberlain that night. And Chuck Chamberlain picked me up off the ground. He shook his hand, and he threw his arms around me when I told him I had about 15 days. And he goes, God, I love you, boy. And he gave me a kiss on the cheek. And I think that's where I got alcoholism, actually, from Chuck. But, he was as warm and as kind to people at the end of the line as he was to the people in the front of the line. And my life started to change. I got a sponsor. I started I didn't work the steps. I'll give you this, I'll sit down. I'm sure we all have blocks to drive home. But except Joe. God, Joe's got miles to go. But anyway, life is not easy sober, but it makes sober life makes life easier. It makes life more adaptable. It makes life more tolerable. I was given directions by my first sponsor to get to meetings early, to look people in the eye when I shake their hands, to ask them their name. He said, you're not going to remember their name, but if you ask them 10 times over the weeks that come, you see them at the meetings, you'll start to remember their names. I want you to go to a book study on Tuesday because I don't want you to read the book on your own because you will argue with it. I want you to get a commitment at all your meetings, which means take a job that people will be able to count on you to be there, and then do that job. I want you to call me every morning and check in, and I want you to get down on your knees the night before, every night, and talk to a power bigger than you are. I want you to get up in the morning and do the same thing. And I thought, that's stupid. And but I did it. I did all of it. Didn't make any difference. Nothing changed. I'd go there. I'd fold the cords for the anal retentive sound guy on Saturday night. I would mop the floors. I would give people rides to meetings. I'd drive people home from meetings. I would do every commitment that you could have at my home group. I did it. And Sue was there. Sue had years more than I did, and I always just admired her. And we were taught to just do stuff and stop asking about it. We'll get to the steps later. Okay, so I did all this stuff over and over and over again. About 8 months sober, I went to my sponsor and said, when am I going to have a spiritual change? He said, do I look like a psychic? I don't know when you're going to have a spiritual change. You'll have one. I won't tell you. You'll know what it is when you have it because you won't mistake it for anything else. But I have no idea when you're going to have a spiritual change. And I thought that was stupid. So I went back and I kept doing the stuff I'm doing. And then about 2 weeks later, I was mopping the floor at Ohio Street in West Los Angeles. And I was standing there looking at the people in line to thank the speaker. And it occurred to me that I knew every single one of you by name and I liked you. And I didn't know how that happened. And I told him, and he said, well, what part of the first 3 steps do you think you haven't done? There are a lot more than ritual around here. The steps are not meant to do by my will. They're meant to do by my action. I can't just sit knee to knee with my sponsor and decide to turn my will and my life over or come to believe something all at once. It just isn't going to happen. That's me trying to exert my will on something. But if I do the things to be useful around here that are against my better judgment, mind you, and if I learn to control my eye rolling at the stupid stuff other people say, and if I stay in my seat and pay attention, then my life will change, despite what I believe about it. And he told me, your higher power just got a chance to come out and play. And that's going to happen over and over again. That's what a moment of grace is. You haven't earned it. You just did stuff and it decided to show itself. And I believe that higher power is still inside of me, and I can't see it. I can't sit down and say, okay, show yourself. When I do, it shows me something through other people. I see it through somebody at a bus stop. I see it through somebody I'm passing in traffic. I see it everywhere, and I have a choice to either participate in life or resist, fight, and feel miserable. And then I got to call Bob, and he has to do the sage thing over the phone. And Bob became my sponsor about 15 years ago, and my life has changed again with him. And if you hear people say, F. Scott Fitzgerald said, the American life doesn't have a second act, it does. It has second acts and third acts and fourth acts. I have 2 children who are adults now, who I love dearly. There are people who are in my life that I would do anything for, and I mean anything for them. Even though I may not feel it's convenient or something, I'll do anything for them. And that's because of the guidance I get from a guy who does that for people, and it shows me that I can do it too. So I hope you stay. And if you're new, you're in a safe place. And just stick around and see if the way we do it isn't preferable to what you've got right now. And we hope you come back. Thank you.